Just a lady who makes meals, right? That's what Emily, who brought a cake while I was in the hospital, said. Daniel saw how I reacted to it and got furious. What are you doing? Apologize to Emily. I swear to God, I didn't do anything to deserve such anger. It's time to tell them the truth. Did you look inside the cake? I am Susan, a 72-year-old homemaker, working at a part-time job making meals. Ever since I was young, influenced by my mom, I loved cooking. After high school, I decided to attend culinary school. I got my chef's license when I graduated, and have been working at a catering company ever since. I've spent years making healthy and tasty meals in company cafeterias, hospitals, and nursing homes. Though I was a full-time employee for many years, now at my age, I work part-time. Still, I'm happy to keep working, doing what I love, cooking. At home, I do all the cooking and chores, but Daniel hardly ever thanks me. He seems to think men shouldn't cook. He can't even find food or drinks in the kitchen without calling me. Hey, Susan, make me some coffee. Right. I told you where the coffee beans, pot, and cups are, didn't I? That's something you should do, Susan. He's so proud of being a former division head at a top company, but he'd be helpless with household chores if anything happened to me. We have 2 kids, our eldest son Lucas and our daughter Cindy. Lucas got married 2 years ago. Lucas, over 30, was at the right age for marriage. I was thrilled when he introduced his fiancée at the perfect time. He wanted to introduce her earlier, but ended up registering their marriage on her birthday due to schedule conflicts. Lucas had always been responsible, and I'm not about to start criticizing his choice of a partner at my age. On the promised day, we finally met her at our house. She was slender, petite, with big eyes, a stark contrast to Lucas. Emily, Lucas's wife, lived in her parents' house until now, working since graduating from junior college. Dad and Mom were strict, never let me live alone. I'm new to housework, but I'll do my best. Her high-pitched voice and fluttering eyelashes as she looked up reminded me of a TV idol. Right after she finished, Daniel's voice, unable to hide his joy, rang out. That earnestness is wonderful. Just be yourself. Her earnest and cute demeanor immediately won Daniel over, even after just one meeting. Her cuteness and earnestness, something I don't have, must have been refreshing for Daniel, but it gives me an uneasy feeling. For a while we talked about Emily's student days, her career, and how she started dating Lucas. But then the mood suddenly changed. Susan, what happened to your hand? I cut it a bit at work, maybe because I was rushed. That looks painful. Speaking of being rushed, what do you mean? I work as a chef part-time. Even though I'm this age, I moved from a full-time to a part-time job, but I still work full hours. When Emily learned I worked as a chef, her expression was indescribable. Part-time as a chef? So you're like people who cook in cafeterias? Yeah, like a cafeteria worker. As I laughed off Emily's comment, Daniel started teasing me. Susan's always cooking, at home and work. It's crazy, right? Just a woman constantly making meals. Daniel probably thought it was funny. Normally, Lucas would chide Daniel, but he was in the bathroom, leaving no one to stop Daniel's prattle. I was so taken aback, I couldn't say a word. Then, to my surprise, it was her who made things worse. Just a person who cooks meals, that's true. I only cook for my beloved Lucas, so it's fine. Her words shocked me, and I was speechless. But she casually continued talking to Lucas when he returned from the bathroom. I was just hearing about it, but Susan's such a hard worker. I'll take a leaf out of her book and do my best, too. Even after Lucas and Emily left in the evening, I couldn't shake off the feeling. The way they belittled the job I've been proud of for decades. The facade they put on in front of Lucas made me slightly uneasy. I thought Lucas and Emily, and we as a couple, were on good terms. We would give them souvenirs from trips, share extra dishes I made. We even celebrated birthdays with nice dinners. But the more I interacted with them, the more irritated I became with Emily. We're connected as friends on social media, and even her posts bother me. In a post about celebrating Daniel's birthday at a restaurant, I was unnaturally cropped out of the pictures. She even posted about the plum wine and cheese I made as if they were her creations. Annual plum winemaking. Looking forward to drinking with my husband. The cheese should be right by now. Made it with love, so it must be delicious. Emily, as a meticulously living homemaker, is gaining followers. Her posts quickly attract many comments. I was staring at the screen, filled with comments praising Emily. Surely no one realizes that she's claiming someone else's work as her own. Isn't it embarrassing to blatantly lie about making something yourself? I thought it over, but decided it didn't really affect me, so I should just maintain a polite distance. However, I soon realized Emily was more dangerous than I thought. I had some concerning results in a health checkup and had to see a specialist at a major hospital. They diagnosed me with cancer, and I had to be hospitalized for tests and treatment. I'm going to be in the hospital for a while for cancer treatment, so please take care of the house. How convenient for you to just decide to be hospitalized and leave the house stuff to me. How can he say such a thing when his wife is ill and going to the hospital? But arguing with Daniel would only cause more trouble, so I held back. Don't say that. I'd be happy if you could visit me sometimes. Who'd bother to visit you? I don't know the first thing about running the house. Right, maybe Lucas would know better than you. I talked to Lucas, and he promised to visit me between work, which relieved me. Since there were still a few days before Lucas's visit, I decided to gather the laundry and other things I needed help with. Then someone opened the door to my hospital room. I heard from Lucas and was worried, so I came to visit. Emily came into the room, holding a white box from a cake shop near the station. Oh, Emily, you're busy too. I feel bad. Thank you for visiting. Lucas is coming next Sunday, but Daniel hasn't come at all. I'm happy you came. Emily smiling, placing the white box on the table. Get well soon. I bought the cake you said you liked, so please eat some. Thank you. Let's eat it together. But Emily, waving her hands lightly, started preparing to leave. I have some errands to run, so please enjoy it, Susan. Oh, there are 2 cakes in the box. Emily left after a brief chat. Despite her past problematic comments, I was touched she visited and brought a gift. Just as Emily left, Daniel entered the room. Daniel, did you come to see me? I'm here on an errand. Emily was just here, right? While speaking, he plopped down on the chair beside me. Emily just visited. Lucas will come in 2 or 3 days, but she left these cakes as gifts beforehand. She said there were 2. Do you want to eat one? Typical Emily, always thoughtful. I'll have the cheesecake. I felt a sense of unease at his words and suddenly realized my suspicions were correct. I snatched the box back and crushed it into the trash bin at my feet. Hey, what are you doing? Emily bought that cake especially for you. You're really the worst, Susan. Are you trying to make trouble now? I immediately questioned Daniel. Did you look inside the cake? No, I haven't. What about it? He clearly didn't understand what I was getting at. Don't talk about Emily like she's the villain. If you think it's sabotage, then eat the one that isn't cheesecake right here in front of me. I'd rather not. I don't like whipped cream. Who mentioned cake with whipped cream? Daniel looked confused, seemingly unaware of his odd statement. I only said there were 2 cakes, yet without seeing them, you chose the cheesecake. Isn't that strange? Well, I just guessed it might be cheesecake. It seemed he still didn't grasp the important point, so I decided to enlighten him. Also, after I threw the cake in the bin, I only asked you to eat the non-cheesecake one. What did you say? I don't remember what I said. Ha ha. Daniel laughed, looking away. It was his habit with lying, clearly trying to cover something up. You said you didn't want to because you dislike whipped cream, as if you knew there was a cheesecake and a whipped cream cake. That's just nitpicking over trivial things. You're the one playing dirty. He turned red with anger, trying to dismiss the situation, but I pressed on. You haven't opened the box or seen its contents, yet you knew what was inside. I figured out that you already knew what was in it. Don't be ridiculous. I didn't see Emily buy the cakes. I absolutely know nothing. You can keep denying it. Just try the non-cheesecake one. If nothing's wrong, I'll apologize and deeply regret accusing Emily. Upon hearing deep apology, Daniel's eyes lit up, thinking he had an opportunity to turn the tables. But this wasn't the end of what I had to say. If there's something wrong with the cake, you'll call Emily right away. I retrieved the cake box from the trash and opened it. Inside, just as Daniel said, were a cheesecake and a fruit cake covered in whipped cream. The fruit cake with a lot of whipped cream was a bit crumbled, but still fine for a taste test. I placed it on a paper plate and handed it to Daniel with a disposable fork. As soon as Daniel took a bite, he grimaced and muttered quietly, "Ugh, salty, terrible." The cake is salty, right? I knew it. Now, as promised, call Emily here right now, and don't say anything strange to her on the phone. True to my word, I had Daniel call Emily to the hospital room. Reluctantly, he dialed her number, but his usual cheerful demeanor nowhere in sight. It's no fun for him with me, seeing through everything, watching over his shoulder. He looked like a henchman reporting a failed mission to a boss character. While I was thinking this, Emily soon entered the room. "What's the matter? I rushed over after Daniel's call. Did I forget something? I can be so absent-minded. Sorry." Emily seemed unaware that I had caught on to her plan. I pushed the box with the cake she had bought, now retrieved from the trash, towards her. "Yes, you forgot something. This cake was meant for me, right?" "Of course. I remembered you saying that you loved cakes with whipped cream." "You knew about my taste disorder due to cancer treatment, didn't you?" Emily looked genuinely surprised, covering her mouth with her hand. "Was that the case? I had no idea." She still seemed to be playing dumb, so I decided to corner her. "Daniel said this cream is salty. Did you know that too much salt is bad for my treatment?" It was then that Emily finally realized her plan had failed, glaring furiously at Daniel. Seeing no point in attacking her accomplice, Emily seemed to be trying to concoct an excuse. "That's strange. Salty whipped cream? Oh, I know the bakery must have mixed up sugar and salt. I'll talk to them, don't worry." "So you didn't know about the taste disorder, and the cake is salty, that's your excuse?" "It's not my fault. I didn't know, right? If you keep attacking every mistake, people will hate you. I'm sorry. I don't have the cooking knowledge like you. I'll take my leave now." Emily tried to leave the room, but I quickly locked the door and leaned against it to prevent her from leaving. "That's something the victim says, not you. You're going to talk to the bakery? After bringing a homemade cake in a bakery box, what will you tell them?" "So what then? Do you never make mistakes? Amazing. I respect that." Emily's tone was provocative. Engaging in this fight would only disrupt my plan and be a loss for me. I operated the tablet lying on my bed, opening the search engine. The search history displayed terms like cancer treatment interference food, salt accelerates cancer, taste disorder salt. It's odd. This tablet has search history I don't recall making. "Are you sure you're not mistaken, Susan?" "I haven't used this tablet recently. The history seems to be from around the time you and the others visited during the New Year. I remember. You wanted to watch a live stream of a TV idol using this tablet." I didn't miss Emily's face twitching. "You mean to say I searched about cancer progression when I just borrowed it? Stop making false accusations." "It's not an accusation. It's a fact. Look, this icon? It's your favorite TV idol. Seems like you forgot to log out." Emily, seeing the icon, looked anxious, her hands trembling. "I knew you disliked me, but there are limits to what's acceptable, right? This is like poisoning. It's a crime." Emily, labeled a criminal, became furious. "I did nothing wrong. You have always been nasty to me. I just showed you that being able to cook doesn't mean you're superior. Be thankful. I couldn't recall bragging, nor did I talk much about work or cooking with Emily. A few times I brought homemade cheese and side dishes with me. I never intended to boast. If my stories made you uncomfortable, I apologize, but that doesn't justify your actions. Emily lost her composure in the hospital room. You don't get it, old woman. Think you're so great just because you can cook? Getting all proud over tasty dishes? Breathless, Emily was joined by Daniel, who suddenly interjected. He had been like a ghost in the corner until now. Exactly. Women should be charming, but you, always working, never showed any desire to protect the home. Just because you have cooking qualifications doesn't mean you can be arrogant. Daniel, you're still here. You're really siding with Emily. I knew you were here to ensure I ate the salt-laden cake. So what if I am? It's none of your business. I might soon be living with Emily and Lucas. You can manage on your own, so you should just quietly live somewhere else. So, in my absence, Daniel, Emily, and Lucas had arranged to live together. This was news to me, and Daniel's tone made it clear he wanted me out of the house fast. Daniel, have you lost your mind? Living together must be Emily's idea, right? Yes, unlike you. She's kind and approachable. She felt sorry for me being alone at home, because you don't take care of things properly. That's why I always insisted Daniel learn to do things around the house himself. Is the salted cake a scheme for my medical insurance or something? How did you know? I noticed you reading insurance policies and calling the insurance company. They called me and told me everything. That's how I found out. The thought that Daniel and Emily planned to extend my treatment for insurance money, intending to live together with Emily and Lucas, was horrifying. I was lucky to discover their plan through the search history and the call from the insurance company. What if I hadn't noticed? I shudder to think. Lucas, unaware of Daniel and Emily's scheme, was appalled at their malice towards me and my treatment, and decided to divorce Emily. She complained a lot about not wanting to divorce. But Lucas was firm in his decision, understanding that staying with her could lead to unpredictable outcomes. He couldn't forgive her casual attitude towards her actions and did not rescind the divorce. After successful cancer treatment, I was discharged from the hospital. I couldn't overexert myself, but I managed to return to my part-time culinary job. Being in a dispatch company, my workplace varies, and my first assignment post-recovery was at a regional hospital. While preparing today's breakfast, I noticed many comments about the special menu. Is this name familiar to you? The food tag had a familiar name, though the surname was different. Soon, I discovered Emily was hospitalized there. Following the divorce, her mental balance had been disturbed, leading to her hospitalization. She's become notorious among the staff for complaining about meals and daily life. When delivering meals, I encountered Emily arguing loudly with a staff member. So it's true. You're just a lady who makes meals. This old lady got me hospitalized. Why not admit her instead? Still talking nonsense, Emily? I have work to do and can't spare time for you. Among the staff, Emily was now widely disliked and treated as a troublesome patient. Oblivious to how her actions had made her so unpopular. She hasn't changed, always finding excuses and unable to face reality. With the divorce, Daniel and Emily's plan to live together fell through. Despite the initial plan to live with Lucas and the divorced Emily, it would have been awkward for Daniel to stay as before. He seemed uncomfortable. Lately, my eldest daughter, Cindy, now with more free time, occasionally visits, which makes me happy. The most significant change, however, is Daniel starting to learn household chores. With Cindy's help, he's caught between us, learning the ways of housekeeping. It's essential for him to be self-sufficient, given the uncertainty of the future. Educating my husband at this age is more challenging than expected, but it's necessary for both our futures. When making a pot of foo, you cut the ingredients, brown the meat, sauté the onions until translucent, add wine and canned tomatoes, simmer, and season with salt and pepper. I never knew making a pot of food took so much effort. I was wrong to say you took shortcuts. That's okay. You didn't know, but you can learn now. Daniel is starting to appreciate how easy he had it and how challenging household chores are. He's even begun to express gratitude. I hope to rebuild a good relationship with him and return to a life that feels truly ours.
A little kindergarten boy I know was begging to eat the dessert his mother had ordered. My tiny grandson, sitting right in front of me, should be around the same age as him. Despite having a kid's meal in front of him, his tummy was growling, indicating he was hungry and wanted to share his food with his mom. My name is Elizabeth, and I am 65 years old. My husband, Jason, of the same age, works as a private taxi driver, and I am employed in a company cafeteria. We live together, just the two of us, but we used to live with our only daughter, Alice. Alice was a good-natured child, but she was a bit shy and quiet, and even when she turned 30, she was the kind of girl who didn't have a boyfriend. Around that time, when Jason was working as a limo driver, Alice had a chance to deliver an item Jason had forgotten, which led her to be noticed by the son of a company executive who was a regular customer. Their relationship quickly progressed from dating to engagement, then to marriage, and she found herself marrying into a wealthy family. Her husband, Richard, is a tall, high-income, highly educated man who is on the fast track in his career. But he's a down-to-earth, good guy who doesn't let it get to his head. Moreover, around the time we were nearing retirement, he generously helped us out. He gave Jason financial support to start his own taxi business, and he arranged for me to get a job in a company cafeteria he knew. We are really indebted to our son-in-law. A year later, after she got married, she gave birth to a lovely boy, Glenn. The baby we saw at the hospital was very lively and cute, and she looked very happy. We were all wrapped in happiness. That was the last time we saw my daughter and grandson. Afterwards, despite our attempts to reach out, it seems that Alice was too busy with motherhood to respond properly, and he said that they were struggling daily and hoped for our patience until things settled down. Then, just like that, a pandemic broke out, and years passed without us being able to see them. We felt lonely, but we tried not to worry, thinking that no news is good news. I wonder if we'll be able to meet for New Year's this year. Today is my day off. I was lining up last year's New Year cards on the table. I was checking the names and the number of people I was going to send them to. I let out a sigh. Whether it's because they know that my husband, a taxi driver, is busy during holidays like New Year's, my daughter and her family never come. You might think I could just go to them, but since we've been asked to wait, I can't just go see them on my own. The only time I get to see my daughter and grandson's faces is in the once-a-year New Year's cards they send. The cards have photos taken at a studio. It's a rare chance to see their faces, but it always irks me a bit to see them with formal, nervous expressions and clothing. I want to see what you all look like in your daily life. The photo in last year's New Year's card was just like the ones from every other year, even though the cards I received from colleagues and friends featured pictures of their children beaming. Oh well, what happens in other households is their business, and what happens in ours is ours. In about an hour, my husband, who was on the night shift, will finish work and come home. He requested a hot pot for dinner because it's cold due to the snow today, so I suppose I should start preparing lunch soon. As I tidied up the New Year's cards and rolled up my sleeves, that's when it happened. Ding dong. The intercom rang. I hadn't ordered anything, nor had I arranged to meet anyone. What could it be? With a question mark hanging over my head, I quietly opened the door. There, standing in the falling snow, were my daughter, who looked a bit worn out, and my grandson, who'd grown so much, side by side. It's been a while, Mom. What are you doing here all of a sudden? If you were coming, you should have told me. Well, come in anyway. It's cold, isn't it? I invited them in and closed the front door. There were many droplets of water on their shoulders. As I handed them a towel and beckoned them inside, that's when it happened. She placed her hand on the entrance frame and bowed her head so low that it seemed like it might scrape the floor. What are you doing? Please, Mom, I need you to look after Glenn for a while. Eh? The unexpected words caught me off guard. After asking again, it turned out that her husband was working remotely and he found it distracting to have a small child around. She wanted me to look after him until his working days were over. Don't blame it on the child. I found myself raising my voice and quickly glanced at my grandson. He stood stiffly, his eyes downcast, as if he hadn't heard. I prompted my daughter to raise her face and spoke in a lowered voice. Besides, we're not prepared for this at all. And what about preschool? He's taking a break from preschool for future exams. Just don't ask any questions. Take care of him. I have to go back to my husband, but I promise I'll come and pick him up. Please. Please. She gripped my shoulder so painfully. She's so desperate. Feeling a sense of incongruity at Alice's behavior, I decided to take care of Glenn if she was begging like that. Thank you, Mom. Her face brightened and she hugged her son with a relieved expression. We'll come pick you up when we've settled down. Until then, stay here with your grandma and grandpa. It's okay. They're both very kind people. After comforting her son, she bowed to me again and left. Alone with my grandson, I knelt down to bring my gaze level with his. I asked in as cheerful and friendly a manner as I could. It's been a while, Glenn. You've grown a lot. How old are you now? I'm 4 years old now, he replied in a small voice, still expressionless. Oh dear, he must be nervous. Can't be helped. We haven't met since you were a baby. Come on, it's cold at the entrance. Come in. Yes, he said nervously. He entered the living room with a restless look. Sit anywhere. I'll bring you something warm. Is hot milk okay? Yes, but please don't trouble yourself. He used formal language. I tilted my head at his grown-up phraseology. As I warmed the milk in the microwave, I put a tea bag in my mug and poured in hot water. Returning to the living room with the 2 mugs, I was surprised to see him sitting on the floor with his backpack rounded. Hey, the floor is cold, isn't it? Come, the sofa is open. This is your mom's childhood home, so it's also your home. Make yourself comfortable, okay? When I handed him the hot milk, he said, "Thank you," and timidly sat down, only half sitting on the edge. I wonder how I can make him relax. As I thought hard, my gaze fell on the backpack at his feet. Hey, did you bring a change of clothes? May I take a look at what's inside your backpack? There might be his favorite toy or something inside. It could be a conversation starter. When I asked with a smile, Glenn handed me the backpack. Does that mean it's okay to look inside? There were a few sets of clothes, underwear, important items like health insurance cards and a mother and child health handbook in the backpack. There were no toys, but instead there was a pencil case and 3 toddler activity books. That's impressive. Are you working hard on your studies? Maybe his grown-up way of speaking is for school applications? My admiration made him nod slightly, biting his lip. I have never experienced elementary school admissions. I would think that it's enough for a child of this age to be able to write alphabet letters, but judging from his reaction, I guess not. I grimaced at the indescribable heartache. As soon as I impulsively reached out to pat his head, he visibly flinched. Seeing him turn his face away from me, shrink in an attempt to protect his head, I withdrew my hand. Oh, I'm sorry. It's scary when someone suddenly tries to touch your head, isn't it? I can't help but force a smile. He nervously looked up at me and muttered, "I apologize," in a small voice. Oh, I'm the one who should apologize. I'm sorry I startled you. You look like you've been out in the snow, so let's get a bath ready. I'll make lunch now. You can relax and do as you like, okay? As he slowly stood up, he nodded in silence, and as soon as I left the room, he started working hard on his activity book with a rustling sound. Seeing him like this, I can't help but frown. I wonder what kind of life my daughter and him have been leading. From the way he talks to the contents in his backpack and his attitude, it all makes me uneasy. Is it the pressure of school admissions? Anyway, I can't bear to see him so tense all the time. I'm going to be living with my adorable grandson for a while. I would love to see his innocent smile. I decided to change the lunch menu on the spot. I fried the shrimps I had bought, stir-fried the chicken and onions with rice, and sweet glaze for the carrots. As I was doing this, a voice announced that the bath was ready. I stopped my hand and called out to my grandson. "Glenn, the bath is ready. The activity book. You need to take a bath and warm yourself up first." With that said, a realization dawned on me. Wait, can you take a bath by yourself? Can you wash your own head and body? If it's too difficult, you might need to wait for your grandpa so he can help you. He should be home in a little while. But Glenn shook his head. "No, it's okay. I can take a bath by myself." Oh, he stopped using formal speech. I felt my cheeks relax at this unexpected change. Holding back a smile, I kindly said to him, "That's good to hear. I still have work to do in the kitchen, so you'll have to go in by yourself, okay? Take your time and warm up." I took him to the dressing area and handed him a towel. I showed him where things were, told him to press the call button in case of anything, and then gently closed the door. I could hear the sound of the shower. It seems like he's all right. I returned to the living room, my worries put at ease, and continued with my kitchen work. Side dishes that I haven't made in a dozen years line up on the kitchen worktop. As I finished arranging the various dishes onto the largest plate we had, I heard my grandson's footsteps as he entered the living room. Just as I was about to tell him that dinner would be ready soon, I heard the front door open. Soon after, my husband's surprised voice asked, "Whose shoes are these?" Glenn's shoulders trembled. "Hey, there's small shoes in the entrance. Who is the boy?" Jason stared in wonder when he entered the living room. "Welcome home. This is our grandson, Glenn. He's 4 years old now. Hasn't he grown? Alice brought him today, and she asked us to look after him for a while." I gently pushed his back. He bowed his head. Good evening." "Glenn, you've grown up a lot. Remember me? I'm your grandpa." Looking at my husband, who said this with a broad smile, he subtly looked at me. I smiled back at him. "I'm sure you're cold too. Take a bath before it gets cold." "Have you finished taking a bath, Glenn?" "Look closer. He's already done with his bath." After quickly sending off Jason, Glenn stared at us with a dumbfounded expression. And then, as if he let his guard down, he smiled softly. See, he's just a boy his age when he smiles. I seated him on a chair, and when I placed the plate and soup in front of him, his expression brightened. "This is..." "It's Grandma's special kids' lunch. Enjoy." It's a unique kids' lunch made with the skills I acquired from working in a diner. I even made a little flag to put up on the fried rice while he was in the bath. He immediately picked up the fork, and the moment he was about to take a bite, he paused as if he realized something. Then, with a frown, he asked me, "But I haven't done the drill yet, and I haven't got a perfect score." Huh? I didn't understand what my grandson meant, and I was at a loss for words. Soon, my husband came out, wiping his head. "Oh, it's a kid's meal. Looks tasty. Are you gonna eat?" "Ah, yes, studying is important, but a child shouldn't go hungry." Glenn, upon my husband's encouragement and my gentle words, our grandson slowly took a few grains of rice to his mouth with his fork and muttered, "Delicious," as if relieved. Just when I was relieved, my husband whispered something from behind me. "Hey, you haven't hurt yourself or anything, have you?" "What?" This was out of the blue. What is he talking about? "I'm as fit as a fiddle. I don't have a single crack on my skin." After all, if I hurt my fingers, it would affect my work, so I'm very careful. Well, that's good then. While I was puzzled by my husband's forced laugh, I started preparing his meal. Afterward, we three gathered around the dinner table, but our grandson was nibbling on his food with restraint. If it's too much, you don't have to force yourself, okay? Well, it's not that. If you eat slowly, you get full with a little amount, right? I always share and eat like that with Mom. I know. The food is so good. I want my mom to taste it. Share with Mom. My husband stood up quickly and walked out of the room, leaving me unable to understand Glenn's words. Jason? I hear his voice talking to someone in the distance. After a while, he came back, clutching his smartphone. Then he beckoned me to a corner of the room. What's wrong? I called Alice's house. That's unusual. He hardly ever calls our daughter. I dialed the landline, glad that she answered. What does he mean? Before I could ask, my husband continued with a serious look. Listen, don't raise your voice about what's about to happen. Just stay calm. I didn't understand, but I felt a cold sweat running down my back from the intensity I had never seen in him before. With a smile, he kneeled next to our grandson and said gently, Glenn, do you love your mom? He nodded slightly. Then, do you love your dad? As soon as he asked that, Glenn bit his lip, looked down, and started trembling. Glenn. When I rushed over, he looked at me as if he was desperate for help. I understand. I'm sorry, Glenn. Your grandparents are on you and your mom's side. It's okay. Let me roll up your shirt a little. My husband rolled up his shirt. Seeing the numerous painful marks scattered on his soft skin, I swallowed my scream that was about to burst out. So many welts and scratches. Furthermore, blue and red bruises were scattered all over. My husband exhaled quietly and asked, holding his grandson who was tense and rigid, Was it your dad? Without uttering a word or nodding, he just let out big drops of tears and sobbed. I realized that was his answer. I couldn't believe this was happening. I was shocked by the unbelievable reality. Hurry, let's go. When I looked up at the sound of Jason's voice, he had already put on his jacket and was holding his wallet and car keys. Bring me last year's holiday card. We are going to Alice's place. In a flash, my husband was getting into the car. Listen, it's the same with taxis. When you're alone in a private room with a dangerous client, you lose if you confront them head on. Here's the plan. While checking the address and map, he gave me instructions. The problem was what to do with our grandson. Considering the circumstances, I was debating whether or not to leave him at home, but he got into the car himself. Going to Mom's place. There was a certain determination in his eyes. It is certain that my husband is an experienced driver. After confirming the address on the holiday card, he drove off smoothly without even inputting it into the GPS. During the ride, our grandson clenched his fists tight. It seemed that the trigger for my husband's suspicion was the trash bin in the laundry room. He found it strange to see a large amount of bandages discarded. Then he became sure after observing Glenn's behavior. When he called our daughter, she seemed restless and hung up quickly, saying she was busy. Don't you think that's strange? Even though we're the real grandparents, it's basically our first meeting, and it's the first day we're taking care of him. Normally, if I contacted her at such a time, she would think that something had happened and ask about the current situation or express concern for her child. When he said that, it made sense. Judging from the state when we took him in, our grandson didn't seem to be scared of our daughter, and judging from her attitude, it doesn't seem like she left him with us because she found him annoying. I've told Alice we're coming over now, so she should leave the front door unlocked. Our daughter, who doesn't even have a driver's license, had made the long journey to our house, which is probably an hour by car, by changing buses and trains in the cold, snowing weather. Moreover, her son barely knows us. Just with that, I felt as though I could understand how isolated she must have felt. At the same time, I shivered at the memory of that seemingly nice son-in-law's face. How dare he does that to such a small child? The first time I visited my daughter's house, it appeared twice as large as ours, with an impressive gate that seemed to herald a grandeur beyond. When my grandson waved his hand near the sensor on the gate, it opened slowly. The front door was not locked. I felt like I had caught a glimpse of my daughter's true feelings, something she had never told us in words. "Where did you take our heir?" A pang of pain shot through my cheek. "My name is Alice. The man raging in front of me is my husband, Richard. He was always a bit domineering, but when Glenn was diagnosed with a developmental delay at his 3-year-old checkup, he seemed to transform into a different person. It was because I didn't raise him right. After being blamed for enrolling him in a preschool that I chose randomly, our son had stopped attending due to Richard's meddling and was forced into homeschooling. However, he became increasingly frustrated when Glenn wasn't able to achieve the desired results, and he began hurling hurtful words. Something must have snapped in Richard's mind when I interrupted his strict education, which was beyond the scope of discipline. He declared he would re-educate Glenn and me, and took away my smartphone. Then he began to use not only words but also his hands, and my son and I began living in fear of him. Upon hearing that remote work would start, we trembled with fear. Even now, when he goes out to work on weekdays, we are suffocating. But the idea of having the object of our fear in the house all day. While he was out, I secretly slipped out of the house and decided to take Glenn to the place where I feel the safest. I heard you had an important meeting, so I thought it would be rude to disturb you, so I left our son with an acquaintance. I made up an excuse I had prepared. It seemed to have taken a while for Richard to realize that Glenn was missing from home. Despite him being in the middle of remote work, he took the trouble to turn off his camera and audio to complain to me. From behind him, I could see his screen, and although I couldn't hear the audio because it was connected to his headphones, I could tell the meeting was still going on. "You're already at the bottom as both a wife and a mother, and you're doing whatever you want. Because you spoil him like that, he doesn't grow up at all." Richard's arm twisted with vigor. Preparing myself for the pain that was to come, I stiffened my body, and then a shadow crossed my vision. "My daughter is the best, and my grandson is growing up fine." It was my father. As my husband looked confused, he took his hand and moved it behind him using the techniques of Aikido. The computer was hidden behind my father's body. In the next moment, he had impressively taken away my husband's freedom with just one hand. "Ouch! Why is your father here?" "Before we get to that, would you care to explain the comment you made to our daughter and the horrible marks on our grandchild's body?" I was taken aback by the sudden turn of events. My father, who for many years has been dealing with all sorts of customers on his own, is a black belt in Aikido. For my husband, whose body has become sluggish due to his desk job, it was no match. Richard looked lost for a moment, but soon put on a good exterior with a calm expression. "This is our issue. Please do not interfere with our family matters. Besides, you can see the computer, right? I'm in the middle of work, so please let go," he said without any malice. I sank down to the floor and Glenn ran up to me. When Richard turned his eyes to us, he showed a spine-chilling smile. "Hey, can you tell them that we should not involve in-laws in our family matters?" To us, who were emotionally and physically tortured, deprived of food and locked in a cold room, his words sounded nothing less than an order. "Dad, let go." My words slipped out, and my father slowly let go of my husband. I don't know when she came in, but my mother was standing next to my father with her arms crossed. Richard opened the room door with an insincere gesture and prompted my parents to leave. "Well, we should clear up the misunderstandings of you, but that will be for another day. First, you wouldn't want me to lose my current job, right? Please forget about today and go home. Don't take us lightly, all right? What? For us, these kids are more important than our jobs. After seeing our grandchild in this condition and experiencing such an attitude towards our daughter, there's no way we just go home." My mother took out her phone, tapped the screen, and the abusive language my husband threw at me earlier was played back. I've also taken photos of our grandson's body. I'm going to take these to the police as evidence. The blood drained from Richard's face at my mother's words. Police, isn't that overdoing it? It's just discipline. You call not feeding my daughter and degrading her humanity, causing your 4-year-old child's skin to be barely recognizable from the abuse, discipline? That's When I made a kid's meal for him, he said he wants to feed it to his mom. Despite living in such a grand house, you can't even provide a proper meal for your own family? Under a barrage of criticism from my parents, my husband was left speechless. Now's the chance. I plucked up the courage to open my mouth. We can no longer follow your way, Richard. Please, let's get a divorce. What? At Richard's reaction, my body jerked involuntarily, like a reflex. In the past, I'd brought up the subject of divorce once before, but he had outright refused. The reason? He said it wouldn't look good. And even if we did divorce, he wouldn't give up custody of our son, saying that he was the heir. He even threatened to take away the jobs of my aging parents, so I gave up. But now, in this situation, I see a chance. Please, I want a divorce. If you free me and our child from you, I won't go to the police. Stop messing around. Who do you think you're talking to? At Richard's roar, our son squeezed his eyes shut. You're always so disrespectful. What do you think would happen to my reputation at work if I got divorced? I'm known as a family man there. We live in a good house, wear nice clothes. I even provide work for your retired parents. And our child is set on a path to success. I deserve gratitude, not complaints. When he had finally run out of breath from his outburst, my father then muttered expressionlessly, "Thank you for finally revealing your true colors." What? Didn't you notice? When my husband used his technique on you, he turned on the microphone and camera on your computer. What? At my mother's words, Richard hastily ran to his computer. In his haste, he tripped on the headphone cord and it unplugged from his computer. You could hear the conversation from the other side of the monitor. Everyone was sidetracked from their work discussion. No way. This isn't a prank, right? Isn't this bad? Well, this is... Even though he tried to give an awkward smile to the camera and explain, it was too late. Everyone stopped paying attention to the screen, and one by one, people started to log off until the screen went completely dark. That's when Richard's smartphone started to vibrate. Seeing the screen, he hastily grabbed his phone. Hello? No, that was a little misunderstanding. No, so that was... Could it be his boss? Leaving my desperate husband trying to make excuses, I headed to the front door with my son and got into my dad's car. In the silence, I muttered to the two sitting in front, "Thank you. Welcome home, Alice." As soon as she heard those words, she sniffled. I've lived for 65 years, and for the first time, I witnessed a terrible scene. Yet the presence of the lovely children sleeping in the back seat warmed my heart. Later, we used the savings that my husband and I had accumulated to hire a lawyer, and my daughter's divorce was successfully finalized. In addition to the child support and property division, we were able to claim damages for the terrible treatment that Alice and Glenn had received. Afterwards, we were able to learn about the fate of my son-in-law through information from the lawyer. There were not only colleagues, but also many executives who could influence future positions at the meeting that day, and it seemed that his way to success was blocked because his true character was exposed. His father, an executive, also heard about this incident and said that he would keep him in the company if he reflected on his actions, but it seemed that he had cut off familial ties. Furthermore, rumors are scary. He abused his wife and children and was taken to the police. He seems to have been arrested before, and other rumors started to circulate, and he was treated as a dangerous person. He seems to have no place in the company, but he cannot quit because he has to pay a large amount of money to my daughter and grandson, so he is said to be working in a difficult environment. In order to completely cut off contact with him, my husband handed the same amount that we had received for help to him, and I decided to quit my current job and start working at a local diner. By the way, my daughter also started working at the same place. She laughs that the meals are delicious and she has gained weight. She seems to have completely recovered. Recently, a healthy menu she came up with was a hit with female customers, and she is happy to receive a temporary bonus. As soon as the marks on my grandson's body healed, he transferred to a local public kindergarten. Because there are fewer children, it seems that they can carefully interact with each one, and I was surprised that the things he can do are increasing day by day. He doesn't seem to be very good at studying, but he likes crafting and makes works using waste materials whenever he has time. Thanks to that, our house is like a small museum. Even now, I still make kids' meals on my days off. Since he eats a full meal and even asks for seconds, it's a lot of work and volume, but I'm not bothered at all because the joy definitely outweighs it. Of course, I put up a flag every time I make it. A small flag handmade by my grandson. "This is you, Grandma." He drew a portrait of me on today's flag.
My name is Jennifer. I'm married to Robert. Robert has a younger brother named James, who's 3 years apart from him. The woman that James brought home as his future wife turned out to be incredibly inappropriate. "Hey, I'm getting married." James looked genuinely happy when he said this and introduced us to his fiancée. "Hi, I'm Elizabeth. Nice to meet you." Elizabeth was a flashy dresser, decked out in designer brands. Her makeup and nails were bold, making her a little intimidating at first glance. But after talking to her, we found her to be outgoing and charming. We were genuinely happy for brother-in-law's marriage. Robert's parents have both passed away. His mom died when he was in 7th grade, and his dad died 2 years ago. So neither Robert nor brother-in-law have parents anymore. "I bet Mom and Dad are celebrating your news up in heaven," said Robert. "Look, I've been depending on you for so long, Robert. I don't expect that to change once we're married." Brother-in-law added, "Don't say that, or I'll be taking care of you forever." Robert replied, both of them laughing joyfully. They had always been close brothers who discussed anything and everything. "So, where are you guys planning to live after getting married?" I asked, still absorbing their sudden engagement news. "We're thinking of building our own place. The thing is, I travel a lot for work, so we're still undecided on where to build." My brother-in-law answered my question. Since he often had to travel for work, he had a tough time deciding where to live. "We don't have reliable parents to lean on. If we live near each other, we can help one another if something happens." I agreed. My parents live far away, and Elizabeth, his spouse, seemed to have no parents around either. "That sounds like a good plan." "Yeah, but properties around here are expensive. We're not rich like Robert, so it's a tough call." The idea to live nearby was a casual suggestion, but they took it seriously and moved into a house relatively close to ours. After they settled in, we frequently had barbecues and drank together. It was a good time. Months later, they were blessed with a baby on the way. But tragedy struck the elated brother-in-law. On his usual trip back from work, he fell asleep at the wheel and passed away. Robert was consumed by grief over the sudden loss of his beloved brother. Elizabeth, on the other hand, didn't seem that devastated. Normally you'd be distraught, especially with a baby coming. But not her. She did cry, but it looked fake, making me wonder. Feeling uneasy, I reached out to her. "If you need anything after the baby comes, you can always rely on us. We'll support you in any way we can." "Thank you." That was the last we saw of Elizabeth. Months later, we received a birth announcement from her and went to visit. But she said she was too busy to invite us in, so we left the gift at the door and went back home. It's crazy that we couldn't even see the baby when we came to visit. "Absolutely. Our distrust towards Elizabeth only grew. After that, it felt like she was avoiding us. Any time we reached out, she claimed she was too busy to meet. Then, before we knew it, a year had passed since brother-in-law's death. Out of the blue, Elizabeth showed up at our house. "It's been a while, Jennifer." "Long time no see. How have you been? What brings you here all of a sudden?" "I came because I need some advice." "Is Emily not with you?" "Emily's at preschool. Being alone at home with her all the time was driving me crazy, so I enrolled her right after she was born." "Oh, I see. Are you working then?" "Working? No way." "Oh, okay. Good on you for managing preschool then." "I got her in because I was diagnosed with depression after my husband's death. I got a doctor's note and everything." "Wow, didn't know that was an option." "Anyway, the reason I came today is that I need advice." "Right, what's going on?" Then Elizabeth's next statement left me shocked. "Would you mind paying our property taxes?" What? What? Property taxes? Where is this coming from?" "We don't have money to pay the property taxes." "Why would you think we'd pay it for you?" "You said we could ask you for anything, didn't you?" "Well, yes, but..." "Plus, you guys were the ones who insisted we live on that land." "We never insisted." "Regardless, property taxes for that land are higher than other places, and it's really causing us problems." "Why don't you just work a bit and pay it yourself?" "I can't work." "I've even got Emily in preschool, based on the excuse that I can't work due to mental illness." "That's not our problem." "Please, if we can't pay the property tax, we won't be able to live in that house." "Look, I don't know all the details, so I'll discuss it with Robert when he gets home." "Please do." After showing up out of the blue and making such an unexpected request, Elizabeth left. When Robert got home, I told him about Elizabeth's sudden visit and her asking us to pay her property taxes. Of course, Robert was surprised, but he was also angered by her audacity. A few weeks later, we invited Elizabeth over to our house to discuss something important. We timed it so that her daughter Emily was at preschool, allowing the three of us to talk. Elizabeth arrived in a good mood. She probably thought we were going to help her with her property taxes. "Robert, it's been a while." Elizabeth greeted. "You seem well. I heard from Jennifer, but let's hear it from you. What did you want to talk about?" "Well, I hate to be a bother, but I came to ask for help with the property taxes." She admitted. "Why can't you pay them yourself? Is there a reason?" "I'm still dealing with emotional stress and can't work. And with a young child, I just don't have the money for the taxes." "So, you can't handle unexpected expenses?" "Exactly. The property taxes are way too high. After all, it was you guys who decided we should buy that house on that land, so it's your responsibility too. Help us out." "Why don't you have the money in the first place?" "I'm a single mom. It's tough. Survivor's benefits alone don't cut it. I'm barely making ends meet and can't handle sudden expenses like taxes." "You're lying about not having money," Robert retorted. "I'm not. I lost a breadwinning husband. Are you out of touch with reality?" You think I don't know anything?" Robert said something rather cryptic. Hearing those words, Elizabeth's expression changed slightly. "Whoa, you're scaring me, Robert." "You're getting more than just survivor benefits, aren't you?" "What are you talking about? That's all I get." She defended. "It's pointless to lie. I know everything. You're getting money from life insurance, too." Elizabeth remained silent. "My brother had life insurance, you know. He was insured for about $1,000 a month until about age 60. "So what? As his wife, it's my right to receive that money. You have no right to question me." "But you do get a good amount of money every month with survivor's benefits and the insurance money, don't you?" "It's still not enough for everyday living. We have a mortgage." "You've paid off the mortgage, haven't you?"
Don't you also get various other forms of assistance?
How do you know all this?
My brother consulted with me about everything, especially financial matters, so I know it all.
I see. But like I said before, I'm his wife and Emily is his daughter. How we use that money is none of your business.
Fair point. But since money is coming in, you should manage it properly and pay your own taxes.
Robert, you work for a big corporation and you're rich. Why can't you just help us out a little? You're being too stingy. Elizabeth still seemed unconvinced. Listening to this conversation, I finally understood why Elizabeth, even after losing her husband, continued to live lavishly without working. I can't complain. That money was something her late husband left for her. But Robert wasn't done talking. That's when I came to know an unbelievable fact.
So earlier, you said the kid is James's. Is that true?
What? What are you talking about? Of course it is.
Well, that's good. Because if it's not, we have a big problem.
Isn't that quite rude? I just lost my husband. Don't start accusing me of things. I, who had been silently listening, quickly interjected. That's crossing the line, man. But Robert continued.
You see, my brother consulted me when he found out about the pregnancy.
What about?
He said that judging by the due date, there's no way the child could be his.
What do you mean?
He was always on an extended business trip and hadn't been home during that time. He was worried that the child might not be his.
That's absurd.
I thought so too, initially. James said there was no evidence of an affair. Then he passed away before we could gather any.
So it was a misunderstanding, right?
After James was gone, I couldn't shake off the thought, so I investigated.
Investigated what?
Whether you had been unfaithful, Elizabeth.
My jaw dropped. Next to me, in a state of shock from his newfound information, Robert continued speaking to Elizabeth.
I was planning to take my time gathering evidence, but since you came to our home, I hurried my investigation.
And what did you find?
You're living with another man now, aren't you?
So what if I am? He's someone I started seeing after my husband passed.
I see. I was wondering if the man you're living with is the child's father, but it turns out he's not.
Emily's father is your brother. Do you have any proof?
Sorry to say, I approached Emily and the man at the park and got a single hair strand from their clothing.
That's creepy.
I do feel a bit guilty, but it's for my brother.
And what did you do with it?
James is no longer with us, so I submitted the hair along with mine for a DNA test.
According to Robert, even if it's not from the father, a close relative can provide enough genetic information for a paternity test. And Robert went on.
The test showed that Emily is not James's child.
Elizabeth looked down, unable to speak. And then she finally spoke, almost in a whisper. So what does that mean?
It's heartbreaking for James.
Speaking ill of the dead accomplishes nothing.
Maybe, but since my brother can't find justice, I plan to file a lawsuit against you and your lover for damages.
What? What are you talking about? We're getting married soon.
Oh, really? Well, that makes things easier.
What does?
Since the house is already paid off, you should just sell it. Then you can use that money to pay for both your compensations.
Why should I?
If you can afford the compensation, you're welcome to stay. But your fiancé doesn't work, right?
How do you know that?
You can get by without working now, but that changes when you're married.
It's none of your business. That the conversation was far from over, and angry Elizabeth tried to leave. Robert spoke up.
I'll handle the property taxes for you. I'll also start the process for selling the house.
Angry Elizabeth stormed off and eventually sold the house just as Robert suggested. The house sold quickly due to its desirable location and being relatively new. Elizabeth paid the compensation with the money from the sale. Apparently, Elizabeth and her man got married. But because of that, she would no longer receive the survivor's benefits she had been getting due to her husband's passing. Ignorant Elizabeth had no clue about this. She bought a cheap, used house with the money from the sale. No longer a single mom,
Her financial aid dried up, as did the survivors' benefits. Both Elizabeth and her new husband had to start working. Elizabeth had been a spender on fashion and beauty, but her marriage marked the start of a tougher life. Her husband couldn't keep a job, and their marriage soon fell apart. Elizabeth was back to being a single mom, but now, with no financial aid coming in, she has to work desperately to make ends meet. For us, the storm has passed, and our peaceful days have returned. We were even blessed with a child we had longed for. I can't wait to meet the child that I will have with my beloved Robert. We will give our child the middle name of my late brother-in-law, ensuring that his memory will always be with us.
Why isn't my son's wife here?
Well, she's not family, so it's no surprise, right?
She is probably off working some shitty job.
At Mark's question, my mother-in-law Olivia chuckles as if to mock him, thinking it's a moot point. Following suit, Mark's son Johnson adds another comment and laughs gleefully. Surprised, Mark's eyes widen at the scene. Olivia explains to Mark the reason I'm not there, all while grinning. Hearing this, Mark's anger reaches its boiling point and a loud slap resonates through the hall.
Mom!
What are you doing?
Olivia and Johnson have lost it.
Mark shouts, filling the funeral home with his voice. I am Mia, a 40-year-old housewife married to Johnson for 15 years. Our marriage was happy in the beginning, but for the past few years, laughter has been scarce. The first 10 years were pure bliss. Olivia and I got along and my relationship with Johnson was good. But when I turned 35, tragedy struck.
You have esophermia.
Upon hearing the doctor's words, Johnson and I were speechless. 10 years of marriage and no children? Naturally, we were getting anxious. Was I the infertile one? So gathering courage, I convinced Johnson, and we both went to an infertility clinic. To our surprise, the issue was male infertility. We were too shocked to react. We discussed infertility treatment and future steps with the doctor, but realized that due to costs, my age, and potential risks, it may not be safe. Still, we had to decide whether to proceed with treatment.
Go home and discuss this thoroughly,
the doctor advised. That night, Johnson and I decided against the treatment. We had already been married for 10 years. I was past 30. Considering the risk of pregnancy and childbirth, we chose not to proceed.
I would rather not have kids if it means losing you,
Johnson said, so we abandoned the treatment. However, I didn't notice it at the time, but I didn't realize what Johnson was really plotting. Time passed, and when I was 37, Johnson suddenly proposed that we live with his mother.
Mom's mobility is limited, and she's finding it hard to manage even simple household chores or shopping. Can we live together?
I saw no reason to refuse. Our relationship with Olivia had been fine up until then. If it made Olivia's life easier, I wasn't complaining. But that's when the nightmare began.
Mia, the seasoning in this dish is too strong. Is this how you always cook?
It was the first day I took over dinner since we moved in. Upon tasting the soup, Olivia made a remark that left me frozen.
Overall, it's too salty and soy sauce heavy. Then on the other hand, the chicken sauté is incredibly sweet. Could Johnson's infertility be because of eating like this?
I couldn't comprehend the barrage of words coming out of Olivia's mouth. What is she talking about? Why is she saying these things to me? Olivia suddenly changed and I couldn't hide my surprise. But that was just the beginning.
The food is inedible.
With that, Olivia started dumping the food I had made into the sink. She picked up everyone's plates and began tossing them in the trash one by one. I was so taken aback by her terrible behavior that I raised my voice.
Mother-in-law, what are you doing?
Don't call me mother-in-law. I am not Mia's mom. Call me by my name, will you?
A cold and stern gaze met my eyes. Her tone was icy,
making me feel like I was less than human. Still can't believe my son is infertile. Are you sure it's not actually your fault? What? We showed you the medical reports. So what? You're saying it's my son's fault? You know how well I've taken care of Johnson and how nutritious his meals have been. That seemed to be the last straw for Olivia. She hurled a plate at me. The plate shattered on the floor, scattering pieces everywhere. I don't believe it. If Johnson can't have kids, it's because you have ruined his health. Could this really be happening? The words coming out of Olivia's mouth were unbelievable. Did I ruin Johnson? Was it my fault Johnson was unhealthy? Tears welled up in my eyes as I considered this. If you're going to cry and regret it, then take responsibility and look after our family. You ruined Johnson's life, so the least you can do is make up for it. Olivia sneered as she said this, then started cooking without cleaning up the mess. All the while, she kept complaining about her sore feet treating me like a servant. I couldn't bear this life any longer. That night, I decided to talk to Johnson.
Mom said that? Stop kidding. She would never say something like that.
Johnson dismissed me as he hung up his suit. Instead of listening to me, he acted like I was lying, but I pressed on. It's true. Olivia really did that to me. But Johnson sighed deeply before I could continue.
Look, you agreed to live together. Just get along. Mom's been tough because she wants grandkids. Try to be more understanding. I'm busy with work and can't take care of this.
With that, Johnson left the conversation and disappeared into the living room. There, Olivia and Johnson were talking behind my back. Not wanting to hear it, I retreated to the bedroom and cried into the night. And so, my hellish life began. Day after day, I felt like my dignity was being stripped away, even to the point of physical abuse. I had thought about divorce more times than I could count. But both my parents had passed away early, and I have no siblings. I had no one to turn to and no income as a stay-at-home wife. Considering everyday expenses, I couldn't muster the courage to get a divorce. Dark thoughts crossed my mind frequently. Olivia's time is also limited. Just endure it. I thought, this too shall pass. So I gritted my teeth and went on with my life. Then something happened. Johnson's grandmother, who had been hospitalized, passed away yesterday. As we prepared for the funeral, Olivia gave me a stern warning. Mia, please prepare coffee and do chores in the back. Don't show your face at the funeral. Why can't I? Just as I said, I'll handle our relatives. You're an outsider. We don't need you here. Are you kidding me? Do you think you're part of this family? Apart from being a housekeeper, you mean nothing. Don't assume you're welcome here. Got it? I couldn't find the words to respond to Olivia's icy remarks. Who knows what she would say next? I had grown afraid of her. If I stood up to her, I was sure I would face even worse treatment at home. Somebody help me! I can't stand this life anymore. I want to run away, escape from all of this. Crying inside, I did as I was told, unaware of what would unfold at the funeral hall.
Hey, where's Mia? Where did she go?
In the hall, father-in-law Mark was managing the funeral. Mark usually volunteers and is rarely home. Today, he made it back for his mother's funeral. I had barely talked to Mark because he leaves for work as soon as he returns home, but whenever he saw me, he always smiled and expressed his gratitude.
I'm glad you're the wife of such a foolish son. Please take care of the family while I'm away.
He probably had no idea of the life I was leading. That's why Mark's smile was my only comfort. His kindness was a reminder that not everyone was against me. Where's Mia? Maybe she's around somewhere, Olivia responded dismissively.
Why isn't my son's wife here?
She's not family, so obviously she's not here.
That useless woman is probably doing chores in the back. Haha.
Upon hearing Mark's words, Olivia scoffed as if to mock him. Johnson gleefully chimes in as if riding the wave of the moment. Mark's eyes widen, clearly puzzled by what he's seeing.
Olivia and Johnson, what are you even saying?
Well,
Isn't Mia just a housekeeper who's helping out with mom's care?
exactly. We can't just invite someone like that to a family-only funeral. Stop making us state the obvious.
Marx's response is a loud slap that reverberates in the air. Mom!
What the hell are you doing?
Olivia and Johnson have lost it. Mark shouts, his voice echoing through the funeral hall. You think you would be where you are without whose help? I heard Marx's voice even while I was doing some chores in the back, making me jolt as I was washing a teacup. Did I just hear Mark? I contemplate going to the hall, but the words Mia said earlier make me hesitate. I don't want to get yelled at. Suddenly, the door bursts open. Startled, I let out a small shriek. An anxious staff member walks in. You're part of the family, right? Could you please help us settle a problem? What's going on? I don't know, just come to the hall. Apparently, there is no time to explain, so I am hastily escorted to the hall. As soon as we arrive, I see a few male relatives holding Mark back. Mark, what happened? Mia, why didn't you speak up? I rush over to Mark, who shakes off the men and grasps my shoulder. His grip is so strong that my body instinctively flinches. My body flinched, and before I knew it, I started trembling from fear. Mark, noticing my tremble, loosens his grip and looks at me with concern. Upon closer look, Mia, why do you look like that? Has Olivia and Johnson done something to you? Mark? Mark looks at me with concern, not the anger I had anticipated. I also look up in surprise, and his warm gaze makes my tense body relax a bit. I'm sorry, Mia. I had no idea what you were going through when I was not at home. Still not fully understanding the situation, Mark bows deeply to me. I panic at the sudden turn of events and tell him to look up. Emma, a relative who saw this, speaks with concern. Mia, has Olivia and Johnson been bullying you all this time? How did you know? They just admitted it. They said they have been making you do chores. When I looked at Olivia, she was crouching on the ground holding her cheek. Johnson stood next to her looking concerned. So what happened? I was asking Olivia and Johnson why I didn't see you at the funeral. Then they started mocking you, calling you just a housekeeper. And then Mark got so mad that he slapped Olivia. I was surprised by Emma's awkward smile and turned my gaze towards Olivia's cheek. Her cheek was slightly red from the slap, and she was covering it with one hand to hide the redness and pain. However, Mark was still glaring at Olivia and Johnson as if he wasn't done yet. What's the big deal? It's true. She came here to take care of me, and she can't even handle the household chores. She's nothing but a nuisance. How can I call someone like that family? What do you mean, not family? What nuisance are you talking about? What has Mia ever done? Well, that's... She can't even cook properly, and she moved in to take care of Mom but causes her nothing but trouble. Johnson cut in, unable to watch anymore. However, that just made Mark even angrier. Johnson, has Olivia's cooking ever been good? How bad do you think it is? Marx's unexpected words froze the atmosphere. He continued, the food is terrible, the ironing is poor, and the cleaning is sloppy. The only thing I'm grateful for is that she gave birth to and raised Johnson. There is nothing else. Marx's explosive words wouldn't stop, as if he was venting decades of frustration. Mia's cooking was always so delicious. Johnson, you've been raised by Olivia, so of course, you have no taste. The public lecture unfolded in front of all the relatives. Olivia's face turned redder and redder with shock and humiliation. Johnson also blushed from shame and embarrassment, hiding behind Olivia. That our home is still standing is proof enough that Mia is doing a great job. Can you even be grateful for someone who can't have children? Well, it might not even be my fault. With that, Mark swung his fist down onto Johnson's head with full force. What are you doing? I never thought I would seriously swing a fist at someone at this age. Good thing I'm not 10 years younger. I would have cracked your skull. Saying that, Mark shook his fist as if to lessen the pain. The medical results are out. What nonsensical things are you saying?
Well, maybe we can't trust that doctor.
So, you want to get a second opinion? If the results are the same, how are Olivia and Johnson planning to take responsibility? As Mark screamed these words, Olivia looked too timid to retort.
Johnson's wife is truly a good person. She has always been considerate since she came here. Even our grandmother appreciated her concern for her bad leg.
Emma's kind words brought tears to my eyes. For the first time in my life, where it seemed no one would ever help, a glimmer of light appeared. Then Mark took a deep breath to calm himself and spoke. I am quitting my volunteer job and coming back home. I can't leave it to Olivia and Johnson anymore. I won't allow any more harm to come to Mia. Understood? With those stern words from Mark, Olivia and Johnson nervously replied, settling the tense atmosphere. After that, Mark quit his job and started staying at home. Don't worry about taking care of Olivia. I've got this. Use this time to focus on yourself. He reassured me, and since then, I have been able to have some me time, and my stress levels have dropped. Johnson seems to be scared of Mark, but he's become really kind to me too. Still, I can't help but worry about what would happen if Mark were no longer here. But it seems Mark had already thought of that, saying, if anything happens to me, you can count on our relative Emma. And Emma told me you can rely on me anytime, giving me the comfort of knowing I'm not alone, and I started to find my smile again.
I'm Maya, 35 years old. I work part-time to support my busy husband while also being a homemaker. My husband, Sam, is a bit older than me and is a laid-back kind of person. We've been together for over 6 years and we've hardly ever had a real fight. Both of us moved from rural areas to the city, so our parents live quite far away. I first met Sam's family when we went to formally announce our engagement. We didn't see much of each other after that because we quickly had our engagement and wedding ceremonies. There were no issues during that time. In fact, my mother-in-law Karen and sister-in-law Maribel seemed delighted, saying things like, "We're so happy our son is marrying such a lovely girl." My parents were also relieved by how well things were going. I remember that my parents were also relieved to see that. I thought I was getting along well with my in-laws, but I started to suspect something was off during our first extended holiday visit after getting married. Karen had called beforehand to ask, "I'd like to prepare some special dishes. Could you tell me what you like and dislike?" Touched by her thoughtfulness, I told her, "I love fish, but I'm not a fan of shellfish." However, the dinner on the first day of our visit was all about shrimp and crab, my least favorites. I was surprised but assumed Karen had misunderstood. It's not like I'm allergic. Sam even said, "Maya doesn't like shellfish, so let's have something else tomorrow." Karen apologized, saying, "I'm sorry I misunderstood when you told me over the phone." But while I was busy helping Sam with his crab, I looked up and saw Karen smirking at me. That's when it hit me. Was she doing this on purpose? After Sam's comment, no shellfish appeared during our stay, but neither did any fish dishes. Then came the next extended holiday. Again, Karen called to ask about my food preferences. Remembering last time, I said, "I like anything except shellfish." While shellfish was served, other dishes were also available, so it wasn't a big deal. But during our stay, I noticed other annoying things, like the water heater being turned off while I was in the bath, or footprints on my boots. When I asked Karen, she gave vague excuses like, I didn't know you were in the bath. Or, I accidentally stepped on them. I wasn't convinced, but before I could say anything, Mirabelle, who's close to Karen, glared at me saying, "Are you saying Mom did this on purpose?" Behind her, Karen acted as if she were the victim. Even my usually clueless father-in-law Leroy said, "Is something wrong with Mom?" That's when I knew for sure. This was harassment. During the next extended holiday, I was reluctant to visit Sam's family. I told Sam, "Karen is being mean to me." "Really? My mom?" Sam, even more clueless than me, couldn't believe it. I remembered what Leroy had said last year. I think Karen won't like it, though. I had an idea to make the oblivious Sam understand. I'm going to call Karen now, so listen carefully to what I say. I called Karen on my mobile phone and put it on speaker so Sam could hear. "Hi, Karen. I've been feeling queasy lately when I eat beef. It would be great if you could avoid serving it during our next extended holiday." "All right." After hanging up, Sam looked puzzled. "Weren't you eating beef ribs just yesterday?" Sam still didn't seem to get it. Remember this conversation until the next time we visit home. Then came the long holiday weekend. The dinner table at my in-laws was extravagant. Steak, pot roast, beef stroganoff. The endless parade of beef dishes was disappointing, to say the least. But the one who looked stunned at the menu was Sam. It seemed he finally understood how Karen and Mirabelle had been treating me. "Wow, this is quite the spread," said Leroy, who was clueless. "I went all out," Karen replied. "Good for you, big bro. All your favorites," Mirabelle chimed in. Karen and likely co-conspirator Mirabelle exchanged knowing smiles. I was pondering how to address the situation when Sam beat me to it. He grabbed my arm and stood up. "Mom, so you really have been harassing Maya." Karen and Mirabelle panicked at Sam's unexpected change of tone. "What are you talking about? That's not true." "Yeah, big bro. Mom prepared all this lavish food for your wife, didn't she?" "I heard you on the phone, Mom. Maya told you she can't eat beef. I thought it was a misunderstanding at first, but now it's clear you did this on purpose." Karen and Mirabelle's faces turned pale. "Let's go." "Oh, wait a minute." "Mom, Mirabelle, explain yourselves," demanded Leroy, usually so gentle and smiling, now glaring at them. Ignoring the shouting and crying, we left my in-laws' house. On the way home, a calmer Sam apologized repeatedly. We agreed not to visit his family for a while. Knowing how much he loved his kind mother and adorable sister, I felt that was enough. Leroy also sent a letter saying we didn't have to see them until they genuinely reflected on their actions. He even included gift certificates. So peaceful days without visiting my in-laws passed by. Then we got news that kind Leroy had collapsed. Sam was torn about visiting them, but I encouraged him to go, and we both headed to the hospital. We met Karen and the others for the first time in a year and went into Leroy's room. He seemed stable, but his recovery depended on rehab. Seeing his weakened father, Sam looked defeated. Thinking about how Sam had stayed away from his family to protect me, my heart ached. After seeing Leroy, we felt a bit relieved. "There's a great eel restaurant nearby. You like fish, don't you, Maya?" Karen asked as we left the room, trying to gauge our mood. I was surprised she remembered my preferences. "We haven't had much appetite since Dad collapsed. We want to build up our strength for tomorrow," Mirabelle added. We agreed to go out to eat, thinking it would be fine since there would be no other people around. The eel was delicious. Under different circumstances, we would have enjoyed it wholeheartedly. Karen kept asking, "Is it good? Want to order the grilled one too?" Mirabelle was also in high spirits. "I'm so happy to have a meal with you guys." The atmosphere was so much more pleasant than before. It was unsettling. As we left the restaurant and headed for the station, we ran into one of Sam's classmates. It seemed there was a local get-together that night. Sam was going to decline, but I could tell he was tempted when he heard it was with old friends from his hometown. Why not join them? You can stay at our place tonight, if Maya is okay with it. Karen and Mirabelle looked at me. I was not heartless enough to say no. After all, Sam has been down lately and hasn't seen friends because we've been away from his hometown. Go ahead and have some fun. You need a break, I told him. Sam seemed surprised I was encouraging him, but he decided to go after his classmates insisted. Karen and Mirabelle have been behaving, so they must be remorseful. One day should be manageable. I was too optimistic, letting my guard down over a half-day event. I'd soon learn the hard way that people don't change so easily. Sam left with his classmates for the restaurant, and we headed back to my in-laws' house. "Maya, let's have dinner." Karen calls me into the living room. The food on the table looked fine, so I was relieved. "I forgot. I have a watermelon cooling outside. Could you bring it in?" "Sure," I reply. I didn't feel like I was being used, so I agreed. I open the front door and head to the yard. There's a watermelon by the faucet, soaking in water and looking chilled. As I'm thinking this, I hear a click behind me. A bad feeling washes over me. I try to open the front door, but it's locked. "I didn't think we'd get a chance for payback so soon," a snide voice says. I turn to see two faces pressed against the living room window, grinning. Memories from a year ago flood back. These people haven't changed. "You tricked me! You're the one who tricked us. Was it fun monopolizing our son?" I just showed Sam the truth. "That's called being a poor sport. It's unfair to involve men in women's fights," Mirabelle says, smirking. If you're talking about unfair, 2 against 1 is even more so. "If you'd been more humble and apologized for that day, we'd let you in," Karen says, looking down on me. "Why should I apologize? I haven't done anything wrong." "But you kept my brother from seeing our dad. Isn't that cruel?" I'm at a loss for words. I had felt guilty about Sam avoiding his family to protect me. "If you want to come in, apologize for your past actions, listen to your mother-in-law, and clear up your husband's misunderstanding. Got it?" Karen says, then closes the curtain and leaves. I'm left standing there, staring at the lights in the house. Was I wrong? If I had been more tolerant, would Sam have seen Leroy more? Laughter comes from inside the house, as if mocking me. No, that's not it. If Karen and Mirabelle hadn't harassed me, neither Sam nor Leroy would have had to feel lonely. No matter how unpleasant they are, they're still Sam's family. I was willing to forgive if they showed remorse, but I've reached my limit. If they want to fight, then let's have one. To signal my counterattack, I rang the doorbell over and over. Karen, Mirabelle, open up! I yelled, pounding on the door. Of course, they didn't come out, but I sensed the door of the house across the street opening. I turned to see a kind-looking woman staring at me quizzically. I'm sorry for the disturbance. I'm their daughter-in-law. They told me to sleep outside tonight. The woman quickly helped me up from where I was about to lie down in despair. When asked to explain the situation, he weakly explains what happened so far. Turns out she's the mother of Sam's childhood friend and is close to Karen. She was initially shocked by Karen and Mirabelle's harassment, but believed me when she saw my sweaty, exhausted state. She offered to go confront Karen with me, but I was afraid of retaliation without my husband. I wanted to go to the restaurant where he was. Her son was also at the gathering, so she took me there. Sam was shocked to see me disheveled and sweaty, a victim of Karen and Mirabelle's harassment. I'm sorry. If I hadn't gone out, this wouldn't have happened. It's not your fault. I told you it was okay. The real culprits are those two who harassed us even at the expense of Leroy and Sam. 6 of Sam's classmates were at the gathering, and I was embarrassed to be there in my disheveled state. But they were all kind, getting angry on my behalf and comforting me. They even ordered food and beer for me, which revitalized my tired body. As Sam and I were about to leave to confront them, one of Sam's female friends made a suggestion. The plan was for me to stay at her place while Sam returned home alone. When Sam asked, "What about my wife?" the idea was to gauge their reaction. It seemed like a good way to collect evidence and assess their level of remorse, so Sam and I agreed. Around 11 p.m., the gathering broke up. I stayed at Sam's friend's house while he returned home. The next morning, as planned, I returned to find Sam at the front door. Next to him stood a deflated Karen and Mirabelle. They seemed relieved to see me, but quickly turned furious. "We were worried sick. We stayed up all night waiting for you." Karen lunged at me. Apparently, Sam hadn't told them where I was. "Ah, but you're the one who locked me out." "That's ridiculous. You probably went out manhunting." So that's their game. They planned to lie since they thought they had no evidence. Or maybe they thought my heart would quickly break and I would apologize. According to Sam, after locking me out, they had drinks and forgot all about me. When Sam came home, he panicked and looked in the garden, only to find that his wife wasn't there. Sam lied on the spot, saying I went out and hadn't returned. Their thoughtless actions were so absurd, I almost laughed. "Karen, remember the doorbell camera you were so proud of? It should have recorded me ringing multiple times," I said. "What?" Karen looked dumbfounded. Had she forgotten about her high-tech monitor while busy harassing me? "Mom, the neighbor across the street saw Maya trying to sleep in the yard. She knows everything. I came back alone to see your reaction," Sam said. Karen and Mirabelle paled, realizing their harassment was now public knowledge. "Instead of reflecting on your actions when Maya went missing, you blame her? That's so low it's beyond tears," Sam said. "Unbelievable. I'll never forgive how you treated Maya. Don't expect us to ever come back to this house. Sam!" Karen and Mirabelle let out cries of anguish as their beloved son turned his back on them. Ignoring them, we leave my in-laws' house behind. True to our word, we never return. The only concern was Leroy, but when his health stabilized, he chose a rehab facility near where we live. Leroy was also disappointed in their actions and didn't want to see them for a while. Sam seems happy to be able to help with Leroy's rehab. After our declaration to cut ties, Sam's face, which had been clouded with anger and sadness, has recently brightened, which is a relief. I also enjoy Leroy's kind and humorous company, and we chat from time to time. Meanwhile, my in-laws have become infamous in the neighborhood as the family that harasses their daughter-in-law. Sam's neighborhood friends and their mothers have been spreading the word about how I've been treated. Karen and Mirabelle had good public images, so some people couldn't believe it at first. But the vivid stories from friends and eyewitness accounts of arguments at the front door in the early morning added credibility. Karen and Mirabelle are now socially isolated and mostly stay at home. They occasionally send texts of apology or excuses to Sam and Leroy. But there's not a single word of apology to me, so it doesn't seem like they're truly remorseful. Not that I'm in the mood to forgive them anyway. As for me, I've gotten into camping since then. I never planned to go back to a place with such toxic people, but I thought it might come in handy for survival in case of a disaster. Once I started collecting camping gear and actually going camping, I quickly fell in love with it. Seeing me propose a camping trip for the upcoming long weekend, Sam gives me a complex smile. Sam is also getting into camping, influenced by me. You're pretty resilient, aren't you? Do you dislike a resilient wife? Of course not. I welcome it. And so, with my resilience and my easygoing, kind husband, we continue to enjoy our harmonious, married life.
My name is Mary. I recently turned 40, and for some reason, my legs cramp up when I stretch. Could it be because I've been working remotely and not getting enough exercise? No way, it's because I gained 11 pounds over Christmas, right? I should have asked Santa to help me fix my lack of willpower and my tendency to procrastinate, especially since my go-to phrase is, I'll start dieting tomorrow. Today, I want to share a story from when I was working hard to lose weight after giving birth. I hope you'll listen. This happened about 10 years ago. Back then, I was busy raising my 4-year-old daughter Michelle with my husband Thomas. People say girls are easier to raise than boys, but it really depends on the child. Michelle was a handful, always running around the moment I took my eyes off her. Juggling her, household chores and work was tough. But it was fun too. Thomas's company had gone bankrupt over about a year before. So, we were living off his unemployment benefits and my income as a web designer. Fortunately, I made decent money, so we weren't struggling. But then, another issue came up. It was my sister-in-law, Rebecca, who had just turned 20. We hadn't been very close with Rebecca before, when her live-in boyfriend dumped her. Turns out, she was pregnant, but not with his child. She had been honest with him, hoping to marry the child's real father, but got dumped instead. She even tried to get back with her ex, but that was a no-go. Still, she was determined to have the baby and chose to become a single mom. That's fine, it's her life. But then she started relying on Thomas. Rebecca had been working temp jobs but quit them all after getting pregnant. Probably because it was awkward for her, as her ex-boyfriends worked at the same places. If you quit your part-time job, you will naturally lose your income. So, she had no income and not much in savings. And she started asking Thomas for money and favors. It's not like they were close, she was just taking advantage of the situation. Thomas, being the serious guy he is, was seen as boring by Rebecca and somewhat disliked. But Thomas adored his much younger sister, even if she didn't feel the same way. Their relationship had become distant as she entered her teens. So, in Thomas's mind, his demanding sister was just his adorable sister asking for help. If Rebecca relied on Thomas and he was willing to help within his means, I wouldn't mind. But honestly, I was quite puzzled when I had to help with chores at my in-laws' house or accompany her to the OBGYN. Because Thomas was unemployed, I had to focus on my job more than ever. I used to leave work early to pick up Michelle from daycare, but now I'm back to working regular hours. Thomas had said, "I'll come, so I'll do whatever I can." But ever since Rebecca chose to be a single mom, he'd forget to pick up our daughter from daycare and neglect chores at our home, only to go help at his parents' house. I'd come home to find laundry half-folded, near an open dresser, or wet clothes forgotten in the washing machine. I've even had to leave work in a rush because he forgot to pick up our daughter. To be honest, it was more than puzzling, it was downright irritating. His mom, Linda, is there at his parents' house, and she works just like we do. Why does Thomas need to help out so much there? Even now, thinking about it makes me angry. But I try to understand, thinking, giving birth is a life-changing event, and he's probably worried as a brother. I had to hold back from snapping. "Were you this helpful when I was giving birth?" A little while after Rebecca moved back in with her parents, I noticed something. Actually, it might have started even before that. Our joint account was dwindling. At first, I thought Thomas was withdrawing living expenses. The amount seemed about right. But then it started to increase. Why are we spending so much? Dinner hasn't gotten fancier, and there is no special event at Michelle's daycare, I wondered. Around that time, Thomas had become a Rebecca-only taxi. To use an old-fashioned term, he's a handyman. He'd drive her not just to the OBGYN, but also for local shopping, to a new mall, to the movies she wanted to see alone, and even to dates with new guys. I did think, why are you happily driving your pregnant sister to dates? But kept quiet, every family has its own dynamics. I decided to keep quiet, at least until Rebecca safely gave birth. Then, one day, after I had to rush to pick up Michelle because Thomas forgot, he said, I gave Rebecca some money because she said she needed it. What? I couldn't comprehend what Thomas was saying. Which account did you take the money from? Your unemployment benefits? No, from our joint account, the one for living expenses. What? That's when I finally understood where the missing money had gone. Thomas had been willingly giving it to Rebecca. Most of the money in our joint account came from my earnings. Thomas's unemployment benefits were minimal. Don't make decisions like that on your own. We are saving that money for Michelle's future. So what? It will accumulate again. But the money won't come back on its own. Are you going to replace it? Why should I? Because I want to save as much as possible for Michelle. Then we should also save money for my sister's child. Rebecca can't earn money right now, so it's okay for us to support her, right? Thomas said this with a smirk, as if he couldn't understand why I was upset. Don't nitpick. We have money, but Rebecca doesn't. She doesn't have an education and she's going to be a single mom. We all need to support her as a family. Thomas always acted like he was some wise and understanding husband and brother. I'd say, it's your own fault you don't have an education. Sure, you might not have money, but I don't get why another family should support you who has time to hang out with guys. Why don't you just get a job, Thomas? Stop talking about maxing out unemployment benefits. What are you so mad about? Stop taking your work stress out on me. Excuse me? That's not what this is about. Oh, by the way, I gave Rebecca some baby stuff she wanted when she came over the other day. What? Which ones? You know, the stroller we had upstairs and the baby blanket. She also wanted some household items, so I gave those to her too. Bring them back. The household items are fine, but at least bring back the baby stuff. Those are memories from when Michelle was born. Come on, we're not using them anymore. Memories just collect dust. If someone can use them, they should have them. If you have a problem with that, should we get a divorce? Is that what you want? For a moment, I was speechless at Thomas's harsh words. I had been thinking we'd use a stroller and baby blanket again if we had a second child. But maybe he's right. Maybe we won't use them again. That's what I thought. Fine, sign this. What I pulled out of my bag was a divorce application. Just a week ago, I had impulsively picked it up at the city office, tired of Thomas's excessive affection for Rebecca. I can get a divorce anytime. We have a child, so it's not just about me. Let's cool down. I had been carrying it around as a sort of emotional support, never thinking I'd actually use it. Thomas was momentarily shaken, but then snapped, "If you're going to act like that, let's get a divorce," and signed the divorce application. 3 months have passed since the divorce. For the first month, I had days when I cried, thinking all this over something so trivial. But by now, I was completely over it. I did the right thing dumping a jobless, sister-obsessed husband, I thought. Then, out of the blue, Thomas contacted me on my mobile phone. He said he wanted to talk about Michelle's child support. Since we had agreed he would increase the monthly payments once he got a job, I thought maybe he had found work and agreed to meet. But when Thomas showed up at the restaurant, he looked terrible. He was wearing an old t-shirt, worn-out pants that looked like the elastic had given out, and flip-flops. Thomas should have been living at his parents' home with Rebecca and Linda, so what on earth happened? He certainly didn't look like someone who had landed a job. Seeing my puzzled expression, Thomas quickly spoke up. "Please, let's live together again." "Are you serious?" I divorced him because I thought he was nuts, but this time I couldn't help but wonder, is he okay upstairs? Who in their right mind would live with their ex-husband again? What a chore. I know, I'm asking something crazy. No, it's not just a little crazy, it's very crazy. You're right, but you're the only one I can turn to. What do you mean? I got kicked out of the house by Rebecca, my sister. I'm sorry. I laughed. Why? I ran out of unemployment benefits, have no job, and can't pay you child support. I'm broke. Makes sense. Anyone would toss out a wallet that's not good. Thomas was visibly downcast by my casual response of, "I see." But to me, it was all within expectations. I never thought he'd come crying to me, but I did think that the longer he went without finding work, the more likely this would happen. After all, Rebecca never really liked Thomas as a brother. She was just relying on him because he had money. Wait a minute, though. During our divorce, Thomas didn't cheat or anything, so I didn't get any alimony, just child support. I kind of wanted to get back at him. Is this my chance? A wicked thought crossed my mind. You must be hurting. You were so kind to her, and yet Rebecca is so cold to you. Exactly. I feel like she's repaying kindness with ingratitude. The baby is due soon. But I have no intention of helping her anymore. Right, you should stick to that. You've been trying hard, Thomas. You're the only one who understands that. Really? Linda doesn't get it? Mom says I'm the fool for letting Rebecca push me around. I almost spit out my coffee at his mom's spot-on command, but I coughed to cover it up. Thomas is earnest, which is good, but it also narrows his perspective. Linda probably sees through that, and that's why she's not helping Rebecca. Linda is right, Thomas is the fool here. But kind-hearted me won't say that. Wow, that's harsh. No one sees the effort you're putting in, Thomas. Exactly. Mom and Rebecca can't see things clearly. That's why Rebecca falls for the wrong guys and why Mom ended up divorcing Dad. You're the one saying that after causing our divorce? But you know, you're the only one who really understands me. I'm sorry for all the arguments and for mentioning divorce. I almost blurted out. Thanks, I'm having a blast now. But held my tongue. I quickly changed my smile to a more solemn expression. How about we give it another try? Yeah, let's become a family again. Just as I thought, everything is going according to plan. That's when it happened. No way! Michelle, sitting next to me, started crying loudly. Dad never picks me up from daycare. I'm tired of waiting. I want Mom, only Mom. Caught off guard by Michelle's words, Thomas turned pale. To be honest, Michelle often says, I don't need a dad who won't even pick me up. So I knew she would resist if Thomas tried to reconcile. That's why I led him to consider reconciliation. If Thomas had said, let's reconcile, Michelle wouldn't have understood the word and the rejection wouldn't have been so smooth. Because Thomas used words Michelle could understand, she got his point and rejected him with all her might. Good job, Michelle. It's probably harder for Thomas to be rejected by Michelle than by me. But man, if Thomas had used words Michelle didn't understand to propose getting back together, this plan might not have worked. It was a bit of a gamble, but I'm glad it paid off. Thomas cautiously approached the crying Michelle. It's Dad. I don't have a dad anymore, and my dad wasn't like this. You're not my dad. You're gross. I hate you. What? I'm your dad. I'm not some old man. My dad didn't have seaweed all over his mouth. Gross. Apparently, Michelle sees Thomas's scruffy beard as seaweed. Makes sense. He used to shave when we lived together. Wait, Michelle, look closely. It's your dad. Come here. Ah! A bad man is here! He's going to take me away! Thomas was taken aback by Michelle's genuine cries, a mix of shrieks and wails. Did you switch careers from dad to suspicious person, Thomas? Stop joking and explain to Michelle that I'm her dad. I won't do that. You're not her dad anymore. Didn't you hear, Michelle? To us, you're just some old man. What? Why are you pretending to be dad? It's creepy. I never said I wanted to remarry, but you are just assuming. I picked up the crying Michelle and comforted her. As soon as Michelle was in my arms, she stopped crying instantly. How wonderful. This kid could be an actress someday. But why? We had a good vibe going. Where was the good vibe when you were just venting and feeling good about it? What? I was just nodding along. Michelle almost got abducted by a suspicious person because of you, so I'm not in a good mood. Wait, you were just nodding? You weren't serious? Yep. Enough with the teasing. Ah, right. I said this to Thomas, who looked like he was about to explode. Michelle and Linda have heard everything so far. What? What? I pulled out my mobile phone from my right pocket and naturally Thomas's eyes were glued to it. Rebecca's name was displayed on the screen. What does this mean? Thomas asked, almost groaning. Didn't you notice I was fiddling with my phone while you were talking? Now that you mention it, you were doing something. I called Rebecca's phone and left it on, putting my phone in my breast pocket. So, all the terrible things you said about Rebecca and Linda were heard over the phone. What? Are you okay? You said quite a lot about Linda and the others, like they can't see things clearly and fall for the wrong guys. Thomas turned pale at my words. Just then, Rebecca's voice came through the phone, berating Thomas. "Enough is enough!" I quickly switched the phone to speaker mode and asked, "Ah, Rebecca, did you hear all of that?" "It's all clear," Linda responded. "Really? What a useless brother! Don't ever show your face again." "I raised you and Rebecca better than this. Maybe it's time to distance myself from you to cultivate that insight you claim to have." Thomas's face turned even paler at Rebecca and Linda's words. "No, that was just a subtle nuance in my words. Why, Rebecca is also at fault. She used me." "Maybe so, but you did it willingly. It's your responsibility. If you're going to complain, you shouldn't have done it. It's uncool." "What?" Thomas was at a loss for words at my response, but his silence probably meant he understood somewhere deep down. After pondering for a while, Thomas asked again, "So, are you serious about not remarrying?" "Well, it seems he can't go back to his parents, and I'm his last hope as an unemployed man. Marriage isn't something you can easily return to, just like our baby supplies won't come back from Rebecca. You've lost not just your marriage, but also your family home. Maybe this will teach you to be more aware of your surroundings." Thomas hung his head in silence. Finally, he seemed to realize the gravity of what he'd lost and what he'd done. In the end, he simply said, "I'm sorry, it was my fault," and bowed his head without asking for a remarriage. Fast forward 10 years. Rebecca chose the path of a single mother, but failed in 2 marriages. Thomas, after a long period of unemployment, was taken back into his parents' home by Linda. He eventually found a job, but got manipulated by Rebecca again when she returned home after her second failed marriage. He is a lost cause, incurable. Now, most of his salary goes to child support for me and contributions to Rebecca and her children. He doesn't work for a big company, and his take-home pay is small. He can't even save money, so we might see that wrecked Thomas again soon. I'm glad I divorced him. As I've said, he is incurable. As for me, Michelle has grown up a bit, and the sudden fevers she used to get have decreased, allowing to me work energetically. Thanks to that, I've reached a leadership position at work. It's hard for housewives to climb the corporate ladder, and even if they do, the scrutiny is harsh just because they are women. So, my career progress is considered exceptional. It was tough, but I'm glad I stuck with housework, childcare, and my job. From now on, the plan is to live life without forgetting to smile, just Michelle and me.